The Treasury said today that the major state-backed banks, RBS and Lloyds, have signed up to offer mortgages under the government's controversial Help to Buy scheme. The launch of the scheme, which guarantees home loans of up to 95%, was brought forward by the Prime Minister at the Conservative Party conference this week. Other banks, though, are still to sign up, with Barclays telling Sky News they can't make a decision before the terms are set. Sky's business and economics correspondent Poppy Trowbridge reports.
Hopeful buyers like Ben have faced a tough time in the mortgage market recently. But a property-owning nation is a crucial part of the government's plan to revive a weak economy. So the coalition is launching a home loan guarantee scheme 3 months earlier than expected.
On the face of it, it sounds like a good thing. Cynically and historically, it sounds like it's going to do exactly what it did before and push the property market right up again and end up with buyers in negative equity again in a few years' time.
But a government promise is an empty one unless the banks are on board. And several have said they were not entirely ready for the surprise announcement on housing. And experts add that when Westminster does finally work out the finer details, others can catch up.
What we're finding is a lot of people are quite confused. Some people think it's similar to the first Help to Buy scheme and that the government will lend them 15%. Others think that it will be easy to get a mortgage because the government's guaranteeing it. Whereas the reality is that the smaller the deposit you put down, the more stringent the underwriting checks are.
Exclusive research by Sky News shows interest from potential buyers has skyrocketed. Property website Rightmove says clicks on its Help to Buy pages were almost 15,000 before Sunday's surprise announcement, which then boosted buyer interest fourfold. Clicks spiked to nearly 60,000. The concern is that pent-up demand cannot be met by existing market services. Property agents say capacity is also a problem.
At the moment, we've got big delays in the whole process anyway, just where it's picked up over the last few months. So mortgages are still taking a long time to be offered. Surveys are taking even longer to get booked and actually be verified on the values.
The reality is no loans will actually be handed out until January next year. So buyers have a while yet to dream about the decorations. Poppy Trowbridge, Sky News.
Well, I'm joined now by Sky's Darren McCaffrey. Darren, are the indications then that this is going to go smoothly when it does launch?
Well, we have to remember the Help to Buy scheme was kind of the flagship announcement by David Cameron at last week's Conservative Party conference. I suppose it filled in, or it exemplified in some ways, his narrative about aspirational conservatism, a bit like kind of Right to Buy was in the 1980s with Margaret Thatcher, that we should be a property-owning country, and that it shouldn't just be for the wealthy. But of course, he brought it forward by 3 months. It was due to start at the start of next year, and that, I think, in a sense, caught everyone on the hop. Probably in part the banks, but they've been very keen to reassure us this morning, particularly the three banks that David Cameron specifically mentioned: Halifax, RBS, and Lloyds, that they are now ready to implement the Help to Buy scheme when it launches next week. This is what RBS have had to say in a statement, Lorna. RBS and NatWest will have a range of competitive 95% mortgages for first and next time buyers available when the scheme goes live. Opening hours will be extended in many of our branches to help with customer demand, and we aim to help 25,500 buyers through the scheme over the next 3 years. Lloyds also now taking a similar line this morning, after somewhat of confusion, I think, towards the end of last week about whether they would be ready. That's not to say that all banks are, though. We've heard from Barclays this morning. They're going to wait and see how this gets rolled out. They've said in the statement that whilst we cannot take a decision over participation in the new scheme before the terms are set, we are encouraged by the tone of the discussions so far. Now, Help to Buy has proved pretty controversial to date, and I think the Treasury are slightly sensitive about all this law. Now, of course, we've had criticism even from within the Cabinet from Vince Cable about this may create a housing bubble, particularly in London and the South East. Also concern from economists that there simply is no supply side. There is no sense that the government are going to build houses to try and bring down housing prices. And the Treasury, though, are trying to put us on track and say that they are on track for next week. They've said in a statement this lunchtime that two major lenders, Lloyds and RBS, representing around 30% of total mortgage lending, have already announced that they will be launching new mortgage products because of Help to Buy. This is great news for those who can't get on or move up the property ladder. Now, I think the question for the Prime Minister is not whether this scheme will succeed. I think, actually, when you look at those figures from Poppy, it does seem that young people are going to avail of this Help to Buy scheme. But the question is, will this leave unintended consequences down the line in about 3 years when it runs out? Would it mean higher house prices for future first-time buyers? And second of all, will it really ultimately win David Cameron any votes in the next election? Because that, obviously, in part, was one of the reasons he brought the announcement forwards.
All right, Dan, very interesting. Let's put a couple of those points to my guest here. Joining me is property expert Andy Teacher. Andy, thanks very much for coming in. Let's start first with the need for it. Is there going to be a queue of people come Monday morning, Tuesday morning, whenever it is finally launched, who want to take this up?
Well, RBS certainly think so. They're opening, they've said they're going to open later, the next few weeks, across 740 branches. So clearly people are expecting demand, and I think what the government's obviously trying to do here is play into the hands of the consumer. It's, you know, it's Help to Buy votes, some have said, slightly unfairly, but ultimately this is about making things better for average people looking to buy homes.
Is there the amount of houses, flats, properties out there that people want?
Well, this is the kind of rub of it, really, because I think successive governments have made various pledges over the years. We've had Gordon Brown back in the day pledging to build 3 million homes. We had Ed Miliband doing the same thing last week. The Conservatives obviously made this one of their flagship policies. And both parties, or all three parties, have housing ambitions, but no one's quite got the hang of making it all work. And the problem is that if you up supply or up demand without dealing with the supply, prices are simply going to go up. We know that.
You have the housing bubble, which is what...
it's GCSE maths, isn't it, really? Let's be honest. We all managed to scrape by that. But I think that the point here is that the government really needs to look at the planning system. It needs to unlock a lot of public land that could be used for homes. So we've got massive estates from the NHS and the MOD, Ministry of Defence, Education. These can be used to build homes, but at the minute it's an incredibly costly process for developers to get hold of this. So if we're looking to really increase demand, we need to look at how we actually make it easier for the developers to build more homes at the same time. And it's important that that's considered, rather than just simply doing this, ticking that box and getting people outside RBS to queue up for mortgages. We've really got to look at how we get more homes built at the same time.
OK, so Andrew, come the announcement, when it starts happening, how will it practically work? What are the logistics of it happening?
Well, the logistics are you go into your local branch, and the Treasury have said that it's going to be all of the RBS branches, all of the Lloyds branches. So you've got NatWest, you've got RBS, you've got Halifax within that, and that's 2,700 odd branches. You've got, so that's a lot of branches. HSBC have been mooted as coming out. It's widely thought of, it's widely being speculated that that's going to happen later in the week. Other banks are less positive about it. But to answer your question, it's basically a case of speaking to your independent financial advisor, speaking to your mortgage broker, going into the branch and basically speaking to them and seeing what they've got on offer. And in practice, it won't really make a difference too much. You're not going to go in and tick a box that says, I want a Help to Buy mortgage. It's simply a case of if you want a 95% mortgage, that's what you're going to get. Right. Because the point of this, the whole point of this whole initiative, is to create new products, create new mortgage products that weren't there before. What people are concerned about, though, and we know what happened last time with the crash, that people will be stretching themselves too much. Is there any sort of safeguards within this that people aren't stretching themselves and that a few years down the line they won't be able to pay back their mortgages? I spoke to RBS and Lloyds yesterday, and what they both said is what you'd expect them to say, which is this isn't going to be another Northern Rock. We're not going to let people do their own self-certified mortgages where you tick the box and go, yes, I earn 150 grand, give me loads of money, give me tons of cash. So I genuinely don't think we're going to be in a similar position to things like payday lenders where you go in and can make up whatever you want to make up. There will be very, very stringent safeguards in place. But and one thing I can throw back at you on that is that, we do have this obsession with home ownership. And why don't we look at how they do things in the States, across Europe, and actually have big portfolios of homes rented like offices? So, if you're a business, you rent an office, you sign a 5-year lease, you pay your rent and you get your office. In the States, they do the same thing with homes. Across Europe, they do the same things with homes as well. They have pension funds building this stuff, holding on to it for long periods of time, and they make the money from rent, which they then go to pay their pension holders. Why don't we do the same thing with homes? And that can deal with a lot of the supply issues, it can deal with a lot of the quality and the service issues, and it can really help drive that new supply, which means that people buying homes will actually live in them rather than rent them out. And people renting will get a lot of the service, and a lot of the problems we have with dodgy landlords will be undone.
Very interesting. Andrew Teacher, independent property expert, thank you very much.
Thank you.